Welcome to Journey Unto You. My name is Lorraine, and I am your host. I am privileged to be here with you. And on this platform, we will explore all things autism and other subjects and needs within the community. I will share my own personal journey and how it all got started. I hope to encourage you, strengthen, and build you up, and even get some questions answered. This platform is for anyone who has had autism on their path. So get comfortable, take a deep breath, and just listen in. There is hope. Welcome back to Journey Unto You. And once again, my name is Lorraine, and I am your host. Thank you so much for being here with us on episode 11. Today, I am so excited to introduce my guest. She is a very special person to me, and we go way back. I want to give a very warm welcome to my cousin, Maya Fitzgerald. Hello, hello. Hi, Maya. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for meeting with me today and being a willing person to share your story and your journey of being a mom with a child who is on the spectrum. Maya is a mother of 4 children, 3 of whom are grown adults now, and one child is 12 years old, and he is on the spectrum, and his name is Solomon. Maya has also been a nurse for a little over 20 plus years, primarily in the trauma unit and high acuity, and also experience with hospice, if I'm correct. Is that correct, Maya?
Yes, that is correct.
Maya is now studying to become a nurse practitioner, and I am so excited for her. She's going to do beautifully. So let's just dive right into this. Let's start with the very beginning, which was your pregnancy. Do you mind sharing how old you were when you found out you were pregnant with Solomon?
Yeah, I was 38 years old. He was my last baby. I just love babies so much, so we went for it.
I love babies too. They're amazing. And then, so you had 3 at home at that time? 3 older children?
I had 2 older children at home at that time. Yes. And then, yeah, just a few years later, it was just Amira and Solomon, and Amira is now 18 and Solomon's 12.
Okay, great. And then, so what was the pregnancy like for you? Was there anything notable, anything different than the others that stood out to you?
Well, initially they were concerned about maybe having Down syndrome when they tested at about 4 months, but they were pretty low markers and it was too late to consider anything anyway, and I wanted to have them, so we just pushed on. And then in the latter part of my pregnancy, I found out that he was breech, which would be my first cesarean baby with my last baby. And they offered to turn him, and I declined just because I wasn't sure of it. So yeah, that would be the only thing, that the variable from the other children that I had.
Okay. And then delivery, was there anything that stood out as far as a C-section? Was there anything in the hospital that stood out? What was his first year like from delivery on?
No, I had a C-section and it wasn't that bad, and I was able to stay home with them for about 5 months. For the first year, he was just kind of a typical baby. You know, he's my third. I didn't see any behavior that was outlined. He was a cuddle bug, and he hit all of his milestones.
That's great. When was the first time you saw anything that may have been, well, for lack of better words, a red flag or a sign or something you thought might be different that sort of caught your attention in his development? At what age was that?
I would say that was about 3 years old. He went to a private preschool and he was fixated on one of the teachers. At first, it just seemed really endearing. that she was his favorite person, but he talked about her a lot. And if any other children wanted to hold her hand or sit next to her during reading, he would become very dysregulated. And I think they just thought he was imprinting like a little duck and picked her. And I thought it was endearing too, but I can retrospectively look back and see, oh, okay. He was really focused on this person for a reason that resonated with him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you know what that reason was?
I think that she was maybe his touchstone at school. She was a very kind preschool teacher, and I think that he just decided that that would be his person there. So I can't, I've thought of all sorts of reasons, but I can't figure it out.
Right. Like what was in his mind that was saying, she's my person. And then, so as time progressed, when he was around 3 and he got a little bit older, how did that shift and change for you to where you were like, okay, something really might be going on here?
Well, I really didn't notice until he got into, I didn't put pieces together until he was in kindergarten, and I started to realize his inflexibility, and which of course every kindergartner is kind of their own little person doing their own thing, but he seemed to get really upset and be very reactionary.
Mm-hmm.
And so if somebody cut him in line and he knew that that was his place in line, he would just push the child or punch the child. So there was a lot of interactions of me going to the principal's office and them working it out and, restorative care or restorative discipline. I'm not sure what the name is, but justice maybe is what it is. But it seemed that I was being called to the school way too much for a kindergartner.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
at that point, I decided that there was something else going on. And so I started not hanging out, I started volunteering and actually sitting with him in the classroom. And again, it was very obscure because his teacher was a first year teacher. It was a Spanish immersion school. So I kind of chopped it up to where he's a little boy, maybe he has a little ADHD. It's in a different language. Maybe this isn't a good fit. But as I
Yeah.
hung out with him for that long, 6 months of taking time off of work, it wasn't getting easier. It seemed like he was becoming more rigid, less flexible in directions. And if it didn't have meaning to him, it wasn't meaningful.
Right. Yeah. And what did that look like at home during that time with siblings and all the activities that go on when we have busy homes? What did that look like for Solomon
Well, I
and the
think
changes?
the biggest things that I noticed is it was very, very difficult to feed him. And I just assumed, like with my other kids, your blood sugar's low. Once you get a couple bites of yogurt, you'll be fine. But if I tried to feed him anything that wasn't on what I now know is his list, then he would gag or throw up, or
Mm-hmm.
it was too intense. So we just started thinking of all the protein that we could give him, all the different foods that he would eat. And so
Mm-hmm.
that started the obsession with the menu.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a really common thing with our kiddos on the spectrum. Even my son, he wouldn't eat anything outside of sausage and tater tots for a really long time. Uh,
I get it.
we, yeah, I didn't know. I just thought, okay, whatever.
They'll grow
But
out of
yeah,
it.
yeah, but very common. Even with a lot of the children that I work with in clinic or in the community setting, they all have that. I don't even know. There might be some, maybe I can probably count on one hand who I've worked with that don't have that. But most children on the spectrum are pretty finicky or whatever their reasons are. It could be a color, it could be a taste, it could be a texture. It just sometimes the
It
function is just not known.
Yeah, it could be all of those things. And if they touch, or if the thought of them next to something, and to where even his cup had to be in a certain place. If I tried to
Mm-hmm.
move it away from the edge of the table, it was a
Mm-hmm.
huge deal. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I have seen that. And so I know previously when you and I talked about his school days, he was at a Montessori school at this time. And is he still at that Montessori school or have you made some changes?
Well, after kindergarten, I put in for the lottery. We have a charter Montessori school that's like a subset of our school district.
Hmm.
And once I did that, I was just kind of hoping to work on his social development. And the
Hmm.
classes are, first grade through third grade. And I like the concept and the gentleness of it. So the first 2 years were incredibly rough. There was no understanding of being redirected. And it was a little bit Lord of the Flies there too, another new teacher. And so I just tried to keep him there and support him. And then that's when I really was like, something's going on. Like
Hmm.
this little duck is different than the rest of my ducks. I've
Yeah.
never had to go to this school before or show up or explain behavior. So it seemed like first through third grade was really rough. And then there was the pandemic. And so we were home. So that put
Oh,
doubts
wow.
in my mind, like maybe it's just a social thing. He has a hard time connecting, but he really pined for connection. And so his
Hmm.
impulsiveness and touching people was very off putting to other kids. So it seemed that when he grew up a little bit, his higher brain function had more control, but there were other things that came to fruition that we worked through at that time.
Okay. Now, were you also seeing these behaviors in all settings, pretty much on outings, activities, family members' houses, friends' homes, the park? Was it showing up in all across the board?
All across the board. So we couldn't
Yeah.
go somewhere if he didn't like the smell or if it was too loud. Never allowed to play music in the car. I really like music. I know you do too. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but it seemed like I was like torturing him with music and I wasn't sure if it was just normal kid autonomy struggle or if something was going on. And like I said,
Mhm.
now looking back retrospectively, I see that you fit the pattern, but it was a long process. You're working, you're keeping a household together, so you're just like trying to hold water in your hands anyway. So
Mhm.
when there are things that happen, it's easy when you're in that cloud to think, oh, maybe it's a one off. And then you evaluate what preceded it, what happened afterwards. And it's just a lot of hypervigilant thinking.
Yeah, it is. And as parents, one of the things I hear is there's like this little tiny room for error. We just don't get to fail. Because
Definitely.
it's Tuesday and that's what it is. you know.
Right.
Yeah, and I know I've shared with you before the music thing became an issue in my home as well. And yes, I am a huge music person. And so when my son got into middle school, maybe almost high school, I had to stop playing music when it was just a part of our daily lives as a family because it became a trigger. So, and to this day, I still don't play music every day, which was something I did since I was a little girl. So kind of weird, but those things happen. What is Solomon's interaction with peers right now?
He's actually doing very, very well. I think that the combination of medication and, like I said before, he's had occupational therapy, he's had eye therapy, he's had what else? He had almost like OT working on eating and making lists of foods and certain exercises that's supposed to help you read. And then I took him to a psychologist, and that's when I started the whole 2 year long process of getting him diagnosed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And did you go to your pediatrician first, or what did that look like for you?
I did. I went to my pediatrician first, and he just seemed incredibly confident and kind. Shout out to Dr. Blair. I think he's in his niche, but I think he registered, some people are really good and in tune. And if that's your specialty or subspecialty, he clocked him right from the door in his interactions. And he was like, yeah, I agree. Something's going on. And it was
Mm-hmm.
focused around at the point I was taking him because he wouldn't eat lunch. And by the time I got him from school, he was so dysregulated and his afternoons were bad. So he wrote a letter to the school saying he needs more time to eat. He needs outside, things to do. And then boom, the pandemic hit. So we
Oh,
were at
okay.
home. Poor baby was very isolated because he didn't have a friend set or we didn't have like a pod of people. So
Yeah.
that's when I went into hyper overdrive, trying to do different activities, and school online was just a joke for him, you
Yeah.
know? So, so I decided at that time just to try to work on social skills, like learning how to ride a bike. That was a nightmare. That was very,
Yeah.
very difficult to teach him how to ride a bike, and just his resistance he would rather fall out and completely become, I keep saying dysregulated, rather than being able to bridge the gap of like, we just have one more block to go,
Mhm.
till we
Mhm.
get home. Any deferred gratification was just unheard of.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. But my hat's off to you for trying to get him to ride a bike. Is he able to successfully do that?
He is, but he hates it. There's certain things that he's just like, we have a car. And that's where
Right.
his logical sense comes in. Why would we ride a bike? And oh gosh, just even yesterday, this is a cute story, was his first time going out into the world by himself. So I had gotten him a cell phone. We did a whole contract with very, very specific rules. We even had my nephew witness it. It's on the refrigerator, and it's working so far. Mind you, it's only been 2 days, but so he decided to walk to the park, which is probably a mile away. And so I have the tracker, I have everything on there, but I kind of was like, okay, wait, am I making the right decision? And I sat up and I said to him, I said, what if a car pulls up and they have candy and they want to get you in the car? And he looked at me like I was the biggest idiot and said, I don't even like candy.
Oh,
And then my flag went up and I said, okay, what if a car pulls up and they have like a PC console in there? He's like, I guess I'll
mhm.
say no because I don't even know them. I was like, oh.
Mhm.
And so I
Mhm.
called one of my sister and I was like, do you think I made the right decision? And so the whole time I'm just tracking him on the app and texting him. And then I was like, I need to leave him alone. He ended up playing
Mhm.
basketball and having a good time. And I think it really boosted his sense of self and his ability to do
Yeah.
things.
Oh, that's amazing. See, that's a victory. That is,
Huge,
that's
huge.
huge. Yeah. That's so funny because as you were talking, it brought back a memory of us having the same kind of conversation with my son about, going off with strangers. And I told him, I said, okay, so what if they want to show you ceiling fans? And he had to pause for a minute because that's a big deal for him. So,
That's hilarious.
you got to
I
speak
love
their
it.
language. If it's tempting, what would you do? So that was many moons ago, but yeah, and that's so awesome. I love hearing these victories from parents because I don't think anybody really understands that it really truly is like learning a foreign language. You don't parent the same. You parent the same, but you don't parent the same. Everything is kind of what I've described. His dad and I call it going back door. Everything's back door. If it's front door,
Right.
it's going to be a problem.
I
So,
have a workaround for everything. Like
yes.
there's beef jerky in the car. There's, when we go to a restaurant, I think where's an alternative place because I want, yeah, it's a lot of thinking, a lot of micromanaging, which isn't my style. So that's been very,
hmm
very challenging for me.
hmm Absolutely. Especially he's still in those younger years where it is a little bit more challenging because when they get a little bit older, it does, after the hormone phase, it does kind of mellow out some. So that's really awesome to hear, though, that he at least tried. And even if it's not a preferred activity, he tried. And that's great. I wanted to ask you a little bit about, I know when you and I spoke, you mentioned some impulsivity with Solomon. What does that look like?
Well, one of the long-standing things that we have is I got a different new car with like a more complicated console like screen. And anytime we go anywhere, like I'll put in the directions and then I have music and then I'll just leave it. And he has to impulsively put it back to the main screen in a certain setting, even if it's like I just change the music so I can hear a different song very quietly, of course. But it's
Mm-hmm.
just it just, he's pushing buttons and I'm like, I need to do directions. I know how to drive a car, and to the point where he's had to sit in the back seat, but
Mm-hmm.
at that point, it just seems very demeaning to him, which is not my interpretation. So I've just given up. He has control over the console, and it's how it is because I'm not going to win, and it's a small thing, and if it makes him feel comfortable, I have to acquiesce, even though it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely understand that logic. I do it with clients all the time that, is this a battle I want to fight? Or at the end of the day, are they going to actually, what is the function of what I'm wanting to get done? Is it for them to achieve a certain thing? Am I looking for peace? So I kind of go back to myself and saying, what is it that I actually need out of what I'm asking them? And sometimes that helps me do some workarounds like we've talked about. Did you get to a place where you felt that medication needed to be brought in because the rigidity or the impulsiveness was affecting his quality of life and the quality of life in your home?
Definitely, he argues with the teachers. Well, that's how they see it. But if it doesn't make sense to him, he won't do it, and he'll just tell his teachers flat out no, which is a huge flag for me. But I'm seeing it through my lens, and so that was a huge problem because he's getting big and he can be seen as intimidating. And if you don't realize that he actually has a disability, because with him, it's almost, it's subtle until you get into the weeds and start trying to explain things. So what's happening up until like just, a couple months ago is that his teachers would tell him, well, you need to leave the room if you're not going to participate. And his argument back is, you said we're reading one book and now you're on two books. And so they can't process that he can't make that connection. And so he's being sent out of the room. Well, he's decided he's not doing that anymore. And I'm sure it's the beginning of puberty and hormones. So at that point, we went to the doctor and he prescribed him, gosh, I was going to look it up, but it's the non-amphetamine type of, it's a norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. And so we've been taking that in hopes that it would give him a gap between what has offended him and his reaction. And to be honest, I do see some space there now. It's not immediate. He's not grabbing me in the hallways. One of his things is he really likes to scare me, which I absolutely detest. So I'd walk around the corner and he's scaring me and he thinks it's funny and I want to lose my mind. So he's not doing that anymore. There's some space there for him to make some higher thinking decisions. So there's still some impulsivity, but not as much.
Okay, gotcha. Would you say that the medication that you've chosen for him is a good alternative for parents who don't want to do, let's say, like the Concertas or methylphenidate, which is just a generic for Concerta, or some of the more heavy hitters?
We did try one of them, actually, now that I remember, but it only lasted a couple days because he was so wet at the end of the day, and it didn't seem to really make a difference, and I wasn't willing to wait the time to do that. So I just said, yeah, maybe this will help if there's an underlying anxiety or, just all the feelings around loss of control and not understanding. So it wasn't like he can't stop running, he can't stop jumping. It's just that his thinking place, and if it's in front of him, he'll touch it. But yes, I have seen an improvement, and then he takes the clonidine at night so he can sleep because he's not able to go to sleep. So those help. We did start with the guanfacine, but it gave him headaches and stomach aches. So we've been on this for about 2 months, and I do see an improvement. So I'm grateful for that.
All right, that's another victory. Yay. What about, you had mentioned to me in a previous conversation that there was some physical aggression. Can you share when that started, and has this new medication brought that down?
I think so, along with constant reminders that you're big, you're going to be bigger than people. he does not like hit or hurt people. He's actually a very kind soul. But like if he wants a hug, he'll hug you 4 times, or he'll impulsively just keep touching you. And that's how, I think he gets his cup full of a physical contact. So that has lessened. He'll come up to me and actually give me a hug. And of course it's on his terms and I have to do it as but yeah, he's definitely less handsy, and I feel like he's a little bit less reactive. So I think that's helped him bridge the gap of trying to connect with other children, because we work through a lot of like social situations, and he'll look at me if he tells me a story to see what I think or what I feel. So there's more area for him to try to figure out the rules instead of just making his own rules. But things that he will do that are physical are like, prior to, probably 6 months ago, if his shoes didn't go on the right way, they're going to go flying across the room, or he's going to punch the couch or be physical, which I don't feel physically threatened, but it's a hard stop. We can't be intimidating. So that's one of those hard lines that I've held. You don't have to eat anything that looks like mashed potatoes, but there's no way you're throwing things across the room.
Exactly. Yeah, let's reel this back in. Absolutely. That's a beautiful way to handle it. What I've gotten from you in some of our conversations, and even this conversation now, is that you have been a huge advocate for Solomon. And that just, I get really excited when I see that, because I don't always see that, especially in the field that I work in. And there's various reasons for that. Sometimes parents are just tired. They just don't know. They don't have the resources, and, the reasons are endless. But the children that I see that really do well is those parents that get in there and advocate and say, okay, what's going on? Let me collaborate with teachers. Let me collaborate with the pediatrician. Let me collaborate with my neighbors and people around me to bring understanding. And I even at one point went so far as to write a letter to every single one of my neighbors on the block. And I went and put it in their mailbox and just said, hey, this is what's going on with this kiddo, and don't be alarmed if he's outside doing something weird.
Well, safety is paramount, and that's one of the fears that I have as well, is that somebody's going to approach him and he's, neurotypically presenting, but he won't understand. And that's a scary world. And that part of it, I have to try to give up, give to God or whomever, just because you can't control everything. And those are the things that make you pop up at 3 a.m.
Yeah. Absolutely. We were having a lot of safety issues, which is why I did that. And the local police were familiar with who we were. And we've never had any negative experiences with the policemen. They've always been really understanding, but I know that that's not true for some families. But yeah, safety becomes the big thing. And is your kiddo going to be okay? And is someone around them going to be okay? And you don't want them to be misunderstood. But you have done so phenomenal. And I just want to really honor that, because this is a hard job. It's not just parenting. There's a whole nother thing that goes with it. And you just don't know unless you just don't know. And when you walk that path, then you know. And when you talk with other parents that have walked it, it's like, oh, they get me. And you don't have to explain everything to the other parent, because they're like, yep, I know all about that. One of the things I wanted to ask you too is, what is one or two things, or even three things, if Solomon has them, what are some of his favorite things to do, and some of his favorite things that he enjoys? It could be foods, it could be anything.
Well, he is a very, very, very funny person. He loves to laugh. And there are like certain things that he has. It's so funny. I'll give you one example of him being just hilarious. Is I got these sleep patches for my mouth thinking that would help me not snore. And I put one on before bed and I mumbled, "I can't talk to you." And he goes, "Yes." I was like, "You are such a stinker." And it was really funny. But what,
That's
yeah,
funny. That's witty
yeah.
on his part.
Right. We'll have these flashes of just clarity of just if he sees the irony and it's really encouraging. And then, but
Mm-hmm.
then, the other end is the rigidity. And that's one. What's another one that you're kind of looking for that I
Oh, just
posted?
some of his favorite things. If there's a food, television show, music, anything.
Okay, his favorite food is pho, and everybody's surprised because he's such a finicky eater, but he really, really will eat spicy food. It's just the genesis
Wow.
is somewhere. I don't know where it comes from. Mashed potatoes are the devil, but pho is the best. So for the past 3 years, the only place we can go out to eat is pho. And
Oh,
I am so tired of it, but it is his thing and he loves it so much. So that's kind of a victory. Like the last fail efforts of trying to get him to eat, I know that I can get him to eat a ramen. So that's an easy transaction. Another victory is that him playing sports. He
mm-hmm.
is the nicest human being after he plays soccer or he has physical activity. And I think that's true for a lot of children or most children. They need to move their bodies. That's how they learn. But
Absolutely.
for him, there's like an endorphin rush to where his fussiness and his rigidity is so minimal at those moments. I wish I could
Mm-hmm.
just capture that all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Another victory is that he is open to going to a new school. So we're done with the Montessori school. I feel like he has optimized his sociability, which is fabulous. I mean,
Oh,
there's
that's
still
wonderful.
yeah, there's still blind spots. Here's a caveat. He asked a girl to go on a date to an ice cream shop, and of course it would be supervised. And she said yes. And so this is my guy. He goes online, he buys her a necklace, wants to get a bouquet of flowers. And I don't want to
Oh.
tell him. It's very, very sweet. But then she called and back because he was trying to schedule, and he says to her, okay, when are you ready to go? And she's like, well, I only want to go as friends. And he said, oh, okay. Okay. And I just thought he was going to be devastated. And he really wasn't. He was like, well, people have choices,
Oh.
and yeah. And so he bounced back from that. And I was just really proud of the resilience that he had in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then the thing that I take from it next time is that I'm going to say, hey, maybe it's a little too much to buy all these things just yet. Let's make sure. But then I can't discern, is that an excited 12-year-old who's writing I heart so and so all over their notebook, or is this you reading a social situation and just thinking it's one way but not understanding the nuance. But the end result was okay. It was a normal experience and he handled it well. So that was a victory, I believe.
That's amazing. Amazing that he even had the courage to to pick up the phone and even call a girl. That is a huge deal.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's so wonderful. Oh, and that just sounds so sweet. And guy after my own heart with the funny stuff. I giggle about a lot of things, and you probably remember that from our childhood. I was the one everybody could get to laugh. So I understand that laughter piece and medicine to our souls. What what would you tell parents with your journey with him so far? What would you tell parents if you had to give counsel or give advice, or if a parent said, I have absolutely no clue what I'm doing? What would you tell that parent?
I think I would tell that parent to work backwards, to think of what's the end result that you're hoping for your child, and try to radically come to terms with that. Like I have come to terms with the fact that if he's my buddy and we live together forever or until, something happens to me,
Mm-hmm.
then I have to be okay with that. And I think I am okay with that. I like him as a human being, of course, and I love him. And if that's what we're working with, then we're just on a different path. And so you take from that endpoint and work backwards, like what are the things that I can do that are empowering and supportive? And if you pick those things while you're doing the work, it's so much less overwhelming because you're engaged and you're actually able to contribute. And that's how I felt about therapy and about OT. Well, at least I'm doing everything to optimize his
Mm-hmm.
outcome. And then those other things that creep up and sneak into your brain, like, is he going to be taken advantage of? He's so literal. He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get the nuance, you know. I think some of those things along the way can just seem so overwhelming, but I try to remember and write down the victories because that gives you some space to think, okay, well, I would have never imagined this, and now this is happening. So maybe my barometer might be a little bit off. Maybe I
Mm-hmm.
can't see the full picture that, like I
Mm-hmm.
had said before, he's a sentient being. I mean, there are other influences in his life, and this is his journey. So
Yeah.
for me to
Yeah.
become over consumed and think that bad things are going to happen, or I have to do this, or good things are going to happen, is maybe an oversimplification, and just kind of try to sit in a place of not knowing, which is really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And would you say within your own journey that self-care is a part of that parenting piece? And even for yourself, if you can give examples of how you've taken care of yourself during this whole time with coping and things that bring you peace so that you can kind of get refilled up and rejuvenated again.
Well, to be honest, in the beginning, it was really rough. And again, like I look back, there were probably, the 4 years to where I was trying to convince people, family members and everybody that something's going on. And
Mm.
I didn't, everybody's like, he's fine. He seems fine. He's just a quirky little kid. And so that really, for some reason, was very difficult for me because I needed the validation that
Mm.
there's something going on. And so that loneliness and that place that I was in was really difficult. And I think that the culmination of COVID and being a nurse and working, I kind of shut down. I had like a mini breakdown, and I wouldn't even say many, but like I decided to stop caregiving because I was completely burnt out and refocusing on him. So I took a break. And so
Mhm.
that's why I no longer do bedside nursing and decided to go back to school. But now that I have a little bit more wiggle room, not waking up from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., taking care of people all of the time, I have had more space to focus on myself. So things like
Mhm.
gardening and, cooking. I find that I cook food that I like when, he's at his dad's house, or just being able to like go thrifting and not have to jump through hole or all these, barriers to get him to even go in the store with me because he's excited to go, but then he's like, everything's stupid. And just trying to carve out the little things in life that I enjoy to do, and which to me has meant not including him in a lot of things, which I have some sort of like, everybody, if I'm having fun, everybody has to have fun. So I've been working on that
Right.
too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally get that. Kind of, if I can explain it this way, it's almost like you get to a place where you just have this acceptance and the feathers have come down a little bit, even though they haven't come down, and you make it work. And it's your journey and it's your life, and this is what it looks like.
Yeah, and the irony, or just the fact that if you don't bend, you break, is the
Yep.
same paradigm that I have to parent under and try to teach this person. So it's almost ironic. I'm like, no, these are the rules. And they're like, no, these are the rules. So yeah, it's
Exactly.
definitely a journey. Yeah.
Absolutely. I have one more question. What are your hopes for Solomon and for his path, and what do you want for him in this life?
What I want for him are the things that I see that he wants. I want him to be happy. I want him to have connections with people and
Mm-hmm.
have adventures because he's a very adventurous guy and he loves to learn. So I want him to be able to carve out his peace and his cohort and his peers and like-minded, supportive friendships in his life so he feels fulfilled. So
Mm-hmm.
he goes to bed at night feeling loved and
Yeah.
a part of a community.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so beautiful. I thank you so much, Maya, for sharing some snapshots of your life and being vulnerable enough and transparent enough to share with the world what this has been like for you and for Solomon. And I am just so grateful that you took the time to do that with me. And I want to thank you, and I want to honor you and wish you so much blessings for you and your household. And so with that, we are ending this podcast. But like I say to everyone on every single podcast, you are loved, valued, and treasured, and there is always hope. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor.
Absolutely.
Now I've journeyed oh so far just to get right where you are. The root and the offspring of David, the bright and morning star. Though this cold road which I walked taught me to run to you, and you found me 'cause I was lost, but journeyed unto you. For all my battles you have fought, your word faithful and true. When it was comfort that I sought, my peace you did renew. Most of this cold road I walked, I was carried by you. Guide our talk and hearts and thoughts as we journey unto you. Jesus Christ, I thank you for all you brought me through. Help us to lead your children to journey unto you. And help us to lead all the children to journey unto you.